again, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. This is our second of 3 webinars that we're hosting about really getting your clients engaged and best practices around digital virtual meetings. So obviously a hot topic right now. Everything is pretty much virtual across the country and even in the world. And we really think it's an important topic, and we're happy to share some of Adam's best practices, who has been working in virtual meetings for many, many years, even before a lot of folks were thinking about doing it. So it's very beneficial for our group. Before we get started, we are going to keep the line muted today to really avoid any kind of background noise. And we do want to make sure we get a good recording of the session so that, you know, if you need to, you can share it with friends or colleagues who you think might benefit from finding about the session today but couldn't join us. So we are going to keep the line muted. We are going to record. And that being said, if you have questions, we certainly welcome questions, and we're going to save about 10 minutes toward the end of the session for any questions that you might have. We got some great ones yesterday on our first session, and type them in the question box and I will relay them to Adam toward the end. So that being said, I think it's a good time to get started. I will introduce our CEO and founder, Adam Holt.
Thank you, Allison. Great to hear your voice, and thank you for everybody for taking time to be on this morning. It's a really interesting time, as many of us know. We're trying to figure a lot of stuff out, and this conversation about remote meeting has come up so many times, not the least of which for the past several years, we've seen a lot of professional advisors move towards remote experiences. And I'll share a little bit about that story with you today, because it really comes from my own practice. Just so you know, the practice that we built in the States around AssetMap for the last 22 years, we've actually had AssetMap for over 12 of those years, and we ran 70% of our meetings remotely in the last 12 years. That's a pretty big number relative to, I think, most other people. We learned a lot. We built the system actually specifically for this experience, because we really wanted to manage attention span. But one of the comments that came up yesterday, I think, is really important to discuss. And that's it's that there's 2 things going on. Clearly, there's a lot of our customers that are asking for help, especially during these uncertain times. We need to be there. We need to connect with them quicker, more effectively, and faster than ever. We don't have time, obviously, to meet with them in person. They may not want to travel. And of course, some of our offices are closed. So the reality is that we need to find a way. The real question is what's in it for the customer, because if they don't understand what's in it, and the question came up yesterday, is how do they compel their clients to actually entertain the idea of going to a remote meeting? And my response is the same. And basically what I said is we have to compel them by sharing with them what's in it for them. What is in it for them? What's clearly going to happen, and I'm going to pretend by scripting this, is I tend to tell people, listen, technology is changing rapidly. You and I are both quite busy. I needed to find a way to communicate with my clients even more effectively than ever before. It's one of the reasons we started using AssetMap. But I need to engage with you even when you're traveling, when you're going to go potentially move to a warmer climate. And of course, I'm not always sitting behind the desk. So we need to get comfortable running remote meetings so that we can have more often discussions about what's going on. So just the way you Skype or FaceTime your grandchildren, if you're older, or if you're comfortable doing these types of remote services, we can also meet this way. And it'd be much more effective for us going forward to try it out. Let's try it. Okay. Not all of your meetings have to be remote unless the world changes drastically. But I will tell you that when you have this option to go remote, it becomes much more efficient, because for busy executives, they don't have time to meet you. They're already running 10 of these things a day. They want to fit you in between lunch, and grandparents would rather be out usually golfing if they have the means, or doing other fun stuff. So traveling is not always in their wheelhouse. Okay, let's talk about our agenda today. So we split this actually into 2 sections. I'm going to share with you, over the years, people have asked me, so Adam, what are the critical things that you must do in a remote meeting? And I know that several of you know this. If you've been doing remote meetings for some period of time, you know some of these things. My hope is to tell you one thing you didn't know, right? One little nugget of value that you can take away. Then we're going to talk about how do we deliver financial advice remotely. So we'll spend the first 15 minutes on the musts. We'll do the next 25 minutes or so on the financial advice of how we do this for both an existing customer in an annual review, as well as for a new client. We'll talk to you about that. We'll go to Q&A. That'll take about 10 minutes. And then lastly, I'll share some more resources for those that are interested. If you do need to jump for whatever reason to take care of important business, please take care of that. Excuse me. We will be recording. You could always jump back in, and we've got you on mute anyway, so we won't worry about the dogs barking in the back. Okay, so let's talk about remote setup. And actually for this, we're going to try something new. I'm actually going to share my video camera, which basically means you can see me. Hello, there I am. I'm going to try this because a lot of us, we got feedback that said, gosh, who are you? Well, there you go. Here I am. So now I'm going to talk to you about it. In the setup conversation of how you actually choose your technology, one of the things what's really critical is that you choose the right platform. Voice over IP over phone options comes back a lot of questions. What should I choose? Should I choose a system that has integrated phone dialing, or should I have my own conference line? It's guaranteed you should have these two things connected. There's no reason to fumble. A lot of advisors are sharing us that sometimes the internet connection goes out. It doesn't work really well. You get these scratchy calls. There's some crazy buzzing noise going on. So clearly you should always offer a phone option. I'll tell you, even right now, I'm running off the phone myself, because frankly, I don't want to run the risk that the internet gets slow for whatever reason. I heard there's a couple of people using it today. Number two is that we have to have calendar invites. So whatever system you're using, it has to integrate with your calendar system. And I put up this one-tap mobile because this is really critical. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a conference call, usually 10 a day, and the phone number to call in, because I'm in the car or on a plane or whatever it might be, the phone number is going to take me forever to figure it out. And if I'm driving, forget it. That means you have to have this one-tap mobile. What is this? These iPhones and the Android phones can pick up when they see this sequence of phone numbers. They know what this means. It means if you click on this phone number, it's going to dial all the sequences you need to get into the meeting. And you just have to do this these days. If you don't do this, I'm going to get annoyed with you, and I'm not going to join your meeting. That's how fickle I am today, because you're making it difficult, for me just to join remotely, and I got to look up the number. So if you've ever done this before, please make sure that you offer this to your clients. I think it's going to be it's a small tidbit, but it's really worth it. Number three here is noise management. We get a lot of questions about whether you should use the headset or whether you should go to AirPods or some kind of phone system. Again, this is a kind of hit or miss thing. Wearing a headset all day long is kind of awkward. It looks funny on the video too. If I was doing this with full headset gear like this, and I keep it as a backup, by the way. I have several backup systems just in case this stuff goes down. You can say this is really critical that you do that. But I tend to be a big fan of the phone, but again, you got to have backup on it. And clearly you want to manage noise, because if your kids are running around or the dog is barking, it's just going to feel unprofessional unless you've set that expectation. And so the last kind of setup questions really tend to run around how do you set up your environment? And I can't stress this one enough. If you don't have a standing desk set up and you're starting to run a lot of remote meetings from home, I think you're hurting yourself. You're going to hurt your back. You're going to hurt your legs. And of course, there's something different about the energy when you're standing that is completely different in the delivery. Because remember, you don't get to see people's body language. And so the opportunity to actually stand and project and have that good voice quality is actually really important and comes across subliminally. And so we've actually set up all of Asset Map to be completely remote office suite. So you can just walk in, plug in, and you can stand or sit, whatever you're going to do. And then, of course, the question of video choice comes up. When do you use video, when not? We were a big anti-video people for a long time. And the reason is because it tended to be very distracting. In fact, right now I'm doing this video more as a test to see whether this is effective. But it's also to give you a feel for the fact that I'm not going to put a lot of content on the screen. So if you're going to show a very technical display like I'm going to do in the next section, I'm going to turn off the video. I don't want you to focus on me. And of course, I don't want to look at myself, which is the tendency. You tend to look at yourself and you're like, oh, my hair doesn't look right. That's how you look. I'm sorry. That's how I look. I forgave myself and my mom a long time ago. Either way, the point is that when you want to relate, when I want to connect with you, then I want to use video. And that's necessary in some levels of financial engagement. Sometimes we really need to talk about the technical details. Okay, security. Security's got to come up a lot. Do I lock the meeting or not? There are passwords that can be put on most of these meetings. And depending upon your regulatory environment, you might want to just do this. What does that mean? It means when I send you out the link to join my meeting, there's a password. Guess what that is? It's called a barrier. It's another reason why I'm not going to connect, because I can't find the password. Next thing you know, the meeting's starting 10 minutes late. I'm already annoyed. This is not a great way to create an excellent customer experience. And so what we prefer is the idea of knocking, which means that the promoter or the presenter in this case can actually choose to allow somebody in to make sure that, in fact, we're adding the right people to the meeting. And this is, I think it's more important to allow for knocking versus passwords. Screen sharing. With all of us having more than one screen, I shouldn't say all of us, a lot of us have more than one screen, and I really recommend that setup. This tends to be the setup that we have in our offices, 3 screens or 2. You don't know what's being shared when you hit that share button all the time, right? You're running through your normal day and you're just, boom, you hit the screen share and you're showing the wrong thing. I will tell you, 2 days ago, I ran a meeting with someone who clearly wasn't really adept at this. He shared his screen to log into his systems. He shared his password log, and he had it up on the screen for at least 15 seconds. So just for fun, I started writing it down, and then I emailed it to him and said, these are great passwords. You should change them. Because I wanted to make a point, which is clearly I'm never going to do business with that company ever again. And the reason is because I already know they're not training security protocol to not show personal information on a screen that's unintended. This is just basic hygiene, but unfortunately people don't recognize this. Assume everything on your screen could be changed or seen. That means you get rid of it. Everything should be off the screen that you're not going to talk about. And I learned, unfortunately, this about 10 years ago. I did a meeting, and all of a sudden this pop-up came up at the bottom of my screen. It was an email from my admin that basically said that Lisa needed money because she was getting divorced, which was not public. And of course, guess what? The client knew who I was talking about, or who my email was talking about. I wasn't expecting the email. It was just an email that got sent. I didn't turn off notifications. Very embarrassing. The client told me that he probably wasn't going to do business with me unless I could prove to him that I could protect his data. This is really big these days. If you're doing a remote meeting, all these pop-ups coming up all over the place. Your friends want to FaceTime you. They send you these dirty jokes. You got to get rid of all that stuff because it can affect, obviously, your preeminence. And although I don't think many people are working from a cafe these days, there's a good tendency to want to spin up these meetings anywhere. And so with the security of internet these days, you got to run on a VPN, a virtual private network. If you don't know what that is, talk to your technical administrator or just look it up on Google and find out what is a VPN. It's just really easy to get these days. It's basically a protected shell that's harder to break into if you're in a public environment. So here's the tips that I would share with you, the difference between being a professional and being an amateur at remote meetings from what we've seen. Number one is if you're not sending out meeting confirms and the setup for how to get into the meeting, you're setting yourselves back because a lot of people are not going to show, they're not going to get into these meetings, as well as the fact that sometimes they need to cancel. They need to find an easy way to cancel these meetings. It's got to be embedded in the calendar because you know how it happens. Something comes up, they need to cancel the meeting. You're waiting on the meeting, nobody's in there, and it's because they don't know how to get into it. So you have to find out what the process is yourself. Walk through it yourself. Make sure you understand it perfectly and have several different ways to execute this. I will tell you, I keep this in my phone, the entire setup shortcuts for all my meetings. And I could just type in a couple of keys and instantly put it into a text message. Oh, you don't know where the link is? Here, I sent it to you. And then done is really important to get to the speed. But the idea here is that however you set this up from a workflow standpoint, it's got to send confirmations and how to set up the meeting and allow for rescheduling. In terms of meeting management, I also find that a lot of people aren't talking about asking their clients how much time they have for this meeting. The reality is in a virtual meeting, unlike a personal meeting, you don't have the same kind of time and to really just kind of mess around, right? We tend to compress our remote meetings to 45, 25 minutes. Why? Because I need 5 minutes of fudge time to get into the next meeting or actually take notes, which are really critical. And so I'm saying this, whenever you start a virtual meeting, the first thing I always ask is, listen, how much time do we have allocated for this meeting? What do you expect to get done? And do I have your full attention during this time? Right? I have to get that buy-in right now because I know you're going to be texting in 2 seconds. I can't see you, so you're going to be doing some emails on the side that are urgent, and I'm not going to have your full attention. Get it early and get people to buy into this early on. You also don't want to fumble, so make sure you have all your tabs open, right? So anything you plan on presenting or talking about, have them open already on the screen. It takes 2 minutes, just do it. Log in first so you're not fumbling around and having failures right in front of yourselves. And remember, the tech fails every once in a while. Sometimes the internet goes down, the audio quality falls apart, their phones drop, whatever it might be. You have to have a backup plan if you're doing a virtual meeting, especially if it's important. If this is a timely discussion where actions and decisions need to be made, then clearly we need to have a backup. That means PDFs in the backup. And if you're using Asset Map, we have the ability to just generate a PDF instantly and send it. I tend to have my staff actually generate all the PDFs I need for the day in the morning so that I have, at worst case scenario, I have a singular page I can just email to the client and say, you know what, let's just look at this. I sent it to your phone. Just look at this. We're going to talk about it sequentially and so forth. Okay, so really important to do. Tough to generate a 20 or 30 page presentation in advance and then have them all waiting. They're probably not going to get used, but it's easy if you just generate a portion of the presentation in PDF. This is also another huge problem. You know, with all these big screens that are coming out, I've got 2-3 screens in front of me. You know, I'm seeing something that's this large. If you're using an iPad, you can't see what I'm seeing. So what's critical is you have the empathy for how the user is experiencing this. Ask them, what are you using? Are you using a laptop? And zoom in. It might look ridiculous on your side, but it's going to be legible for them. And that's critical, because if they're not connected and they don't understand what you're talking about, it's like every other meeting, right? What are you talking about? I don't know. So take the time, circle it, say, I'm talking about this. I need to move this from here to here. We have to focus on this. I ran a couple meetings recently with somebody and they were like, you know, you see, and they said, you know, they start talking about something, assume I'm looking at what they're looking at. Not really. I had no idea what they're talking about. I just nodded my head and said, okay, sure. But I didn't really get it. And it was a missed opportunity. In terms of closure for these meetings, you got to make sure that you have some time set up the last couple of minutes to make sure that you're going to actually finish on time with the actions that need to be taken. We don't have the ability to just stand by the doorway and talk for the next 4 or 5 minutes while we're getting ready for the next meeting. So we lose that time. Most people are running these things back to back. And what happens is people get antsy. So once they know that they're late for another meeting, they start cutting you short and they're not listening. They're getting aggravated and they're associating that experience to you. Remember all of the failures in this experience, which is the risk. We know how to run person-to-person meetings. When you run digital meetings, you don't have the opportunity to read people and get the feedback in the same kind of way. And so you have to pay attention and be thoughtful about what's the actual experience from the consumer. The difference between 5 stars and 4 stars is 5 stars, you've thought of all the possibilities of their experience, but you only had to deliver on 1 or 2. Right? A 4-star experience means I disappointed in one of those things. Okay, so that's really what's important about that. And I think this is really critical. A lot of people are missing this. At the end of every meeting, we should get the next meeting in the calendar. Dentists do this great. Do they let us get out of that office without actually having the next appointment? Even if it's 6 months down the line, I'm scheduling the next meeting. I might have to change it. Schedule the next meeting. It could be tomorrow because we didn't finish. It could be in 6 months, because that's when we need to connect again. Also, it's a great opportunity to ask for feedback. Did this remote meeting experience work for you? Do you want to do more of this? Do you dislike it? Do you hate it? Never do it again, Adam. I want to get that feedback. If they love it, guess what I'm going to also do? Pardon me. I'm going to ask them who else would appreciate this experience. And then I'm going to be quiet like I just was. Because the important part about that is I'm going to ask for referrals. If other people would really appreciate this type of experience, spin up a meeting and talk about their financial life, how would I not ask that question? Feedback, positive feedback, who else needs to experience it? And then post the follow-up, you got to memorialize this. And the professionals that I know that are running 5, 6, 10 meetings a day with clients remotely, they all have a way to document. They're typically using dictation to text and then that text to CRM. Great tools that include mobile assistant, as well as CopyTalk is another option, very popular. These are great tools to dictate your notes as soon as you're done the meeting and then get that into the CRM system, because nobody's going to remember after the 4th meeting what we were supposed to do on the 1st. Okay, so with that being said, hopefully you took down notes and one of those things made sense to you, or more than one, hopefully. I'm going to go off of video, sorry, so I'm not leaving you. I'm just not showing you because I'm going to a technical presentation. Okay, technical presentation means what? I want you to focus on the screen. I don't want you to focus on my face, but hopefully you can still hear my voice, and let's get right to it. We're right on time. Again, remember, if you have questions, put them in the sidebar. We will get to them at the end. Here's where they come. Okay, I'm going to show you an existing client review and how we typically approach this just before the meeting, because it turns out that you guys already know how to run a meeting, right? You know how to have a conversation. You know how to talk about issues and needs, and I'm going to show you ways to bring up relevant conversations really quickly so that we can have a really engaging and thoughtful conversation that results in action. Because if there's no action taken, then we're just chatting, okay? It's not urgent. We can do that anytime. if we're making decisions, and we ultimately want to make all meetings with a client about making a decision, because unfortunately, we don't connect with our clients every day. Most of the entire experience is valued at the point of our interaction with our clients. In fact, up to 90% of the associated value of our relationship is associated with the actual annual meetings that we have with our clients, because that's the time when they think about this stuff. So that means in every annual review, there's always something that needs attention, and we need to fix something. Okay, it may be small, it might be large, it may be something we handle, it may be something we don't, and we need to find a resource to help them handle it, whether it's legal or tax or insurance, investment, whatever that might be. Important part there, is to make sure that they are left off better than we found them. So how do we do this? 5 minutes before the meeting, I've got to prepare. That's right, 5 minutes, not 2 hours. What am I going to prepare? Well, the first thing I'm going to prepare is, well, what do I know about these people? This happens to be a sample household that if you're in the States, you can probably figure out who Ben Franklin is. So clearly we've changed this name. Notice what I'm doing is I'm going to tell you where to look, okay? Because this is embedded in AssetMap. We built drawing tools on all platforms for iPad and Chrome or IE, whatever you're using. You can draw on any screen. Really important, okay? Because I need to focus your attention. Sometimes the maps can get big. So when I look at this for the first time, about 5 minutes sometimes before the meeting, I'm just reminding myself into this family. So this is Ben and Betsy. They're in their 50s. They have 2 kids, Joan and Billy. They're 19 and 15 years old. They've got Millie, who's their mother-in-law. They told me about that. They might be responsible for her. So I just add her. I add anybody there's a financial responsibility to in the AssetMap, all right? Because I want to talk about these people. That's why they do all this stuff, is because of the people. Right? So clearly I want to make sure that we talk about it. Jeff Stars is a business partner of theirs. They have some obligations to Jeff and some dependencies on him, as well as they own a company. So clearly these are the people I want to talk about in the meeting, right? So I'm going to ask them follow-up questions. How's Betsy and Ben doing? What's going on in your life? Gosh, in your 50s, what's concerning you these days? What about the kids? Gosh, I can't believe, how's Joan doing, right? She must be in her first year of college, right? I know that because it's right in front of my face. How's Billy doing? Is he thinking about doing something? What's going on with Millie? You think that's going to change? Are there any dependencies here? How's she doing with her health? Is there any things we need to take care of? How's her long-term care scenario? What are we going to do? How's Jeff doing? Is the business doing well? Right? These are the questions I'm already setting myself up to ask. How can I help you using the business? There's certain tax benefits. Should we be thinking about retirement planning? Is there blah, 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 blah. Right? Hopefully you already understand that as a financial professional, and but we're giving you we're teeing up the ball proverbially, right? In golf, we're teeing the ball for you to make sure that we talk about all these people. It only happens if you inputted these people, okay? Right? Just type them in. And by the way, you don't have to know any information about them. I'm just putting them there as a placeholder because I want to make sure we talk about it. In terms of acclimating myself on this family, you can see that Ben's making pretty good income. He's a designer. He's got some income sources in the future, including pensions and Social Security. That's good for the kind of protection strategies. He's also got a good amount of retirement savings. He has 3 retirement accounts that these are what we call qualified by the government accounts. That means they have certain tax benefits associated with long-term investing. Pretty common in any country, but these are his retirement earmarks, okay? He also has some other non-retirement earmarks, which include what we call in the States here an annuity. He's got a potential inheritance from his mom. You might notice it's grayed out. Okay, it's interesting. I probably want to talk about this because he's going to get about $200,000 from his mom. I want to ask him questions about this one. He's got some cash value. He's got an account at Schwab. I don't manage this. He just told me about it. I don't know any information on it. Just last time he told me he had 40 grand in a play account. I don't manage it. I'm going to clearly ask him what he's doing here. How's it performing? What are the updates? What's the intent? How does that match? Now, before I move on, you might have noticed a couple things here. You see this little squiggly chain link thing? That basically means that I've linked this information in the back end to another system. In this case, I actually have this demo is linked to Riskalyze, which I'll show you because it's important. It gives me some insight into actually the portfolio holding itself, but it's actually directly linked, which means that this number is up to date. I don't have to worry about this one. That means there's a lot of information here that's not up to date, and I'm okay with that coming into the meeting because I'm not responsible for it, which basically means anything that I'm responsible for, if you look around, you can see some of the components that I actually do manage or have some insight into. These are the accounts that I think I managed this one too. Yep, that's about it. That's all I really know from this person. So I'm good. I'm relying upon our meeting to talk about what's going on with all these other pieces, at which time Ben and Betsy are going to update me. So I'm not worried about all these numbers being wrong. Okay. The house is not revalued at this. It changes every, whatever, right? There's cash account. I'm not worried about specificity. I need to have the conversation because when we talk about it, guess what I get? I get permission to ask why. Why do we have it? Does it make sense? Does it serve this bigger picture? What's the tax implication? Is the risk match? Does this insure it in the right way? Is this the right strategy? What's the exit plan? How am I going to take the money out of it? So really all I'm doing is I'm setting myself up for an agenda of items I can talk about, okay? Which we find is actually more structurally a better way to manage an annual review meeting than lead right into performance. Of course, who wants to talk about that these days? Or talk about fees and costs and all that other nonsense. We want to talk about structure and are we doing intentional things here? So I'm not going to go through all of these pieces, but to say that typically if I did know something or if I was reliant upon I had to go to another system because there was no link with AssetMap, I would simply go in here and I probably would update this. And if I did know, let's say he told me, he sent me a statement beforehand. Let me get rid of my pens. He maybe was diligent enough to send me a statement. He told me this is $310,000 now. Okay, got it. I updated it. It's saved. We're good. Okay. So what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to do this. The second piece I'm going to do is I'm going to consider who else is in the family and see if there's other issues that I've left out, right? This is their kids. You can see that she's actually going to school and she does some work study. So there's actually a negative cash flow here, which means Joan is a financial dependent as well. And she's only got about $20,000 left in her 529, something I want to bring up in this meeting coming up. And of course, if I manage this, I want to update it. I want to make sure that I'm thinking, gosh, this is what I need to talk about. I also have in the past put Millie here. Millie is their mother-in-law. I don't know anything about her. So what I'm going to do just before the meeting is I'm going to apply a stencil. What am I going to apply? I'm actually going to apply what I call the building blocks. And I'm going to apply those conversation basics to Millie as basically topics that I want to talk about for Millie. What's going to happen now is it's going to create a pre-built template or stencil, we call it, and overlay it on top of Millie so that when I walk into that meeting, I have a whole bunch of stuff to ask about, right? I want to ask her about, gosh, is Millie still working? Where's her retirement savings? Does she have this stuff? Because we need to know where all the treasure's buried if she's in fact going to be dependent on you, because we need to know if we need to supplement anything with additional insurances or otherwise. In fact, we see the same thing is true for Jeff. We don't know very much about Jeff except the fact that he owns part of the business and I think he participates in the 401k. But I might want to actually have some conversations about this. So before the meeting starts, I might be thoughtful enough to say, gosh, you know what? I think what I'm going to do is I'm really concerned about, let's say, business policies on Jeff, and I'm going to apply this stencil. And then I also am in the employee benefits world, so I want to actually see what can I do for the company. So I'm going to go back to my building blocks, and I'm going to talk about employee benefit plans, and I'm going to apply that to the company. Watch this. Excuse me. What's going to happen is now I'm going to actually have all of my meeting agenda all set for me. Do I have to do much to prepare for this? Not much at all. In fact, I can just start a conversation, say, this is what your peers are doing. Do you have these types of things? Right? Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. And let me see if there's some ways that we can add value if in fact we've taken care of Betsy and Benjamin all together. Okay, so that's effectively how we've cross-sold or cross-engaged for many years and helped people deal with multiple situations. What I'm going to tend to do next is when I run my meeting, the first thing I'm going to run the meeting is say, listen, good to see you. How's Ben? How's Betsy? How are the kids doing? Like I told you I was going to do. This would be up on a screen, obviously. Hopefully they can see this. If in fact the internet goes down, I have already generated in one of my tabs. See, I'm following my own rules. I told you I have all my tabs open for this meeting. I've already printed the PDF, so I have a version of an asset map already ready for them, and I have the kids too. I already have my notes published, which I'll show you in a second. And I've already done some of the financial planning behind it that I've pre-published based upon the last meeting we had. So again, if I do lose internet, I am not in a bad way, okay? So I can simply just email that or have one of my staff email them from a different server and download that right away. What am I doing? The first thing of my remote meeting is this. Tell me about what's going on. Tell me what's important. What are the priorities? Now let's review what we're currently doing. This is my moment. This is your moment to ask your intentionality behind every one of these things. Does it make sense? Can I think of something different? Does it make sense to consolidate this? Does this still serve us? That's a good question. What are we doing with this cash value? Has anybody looked at the tax implications? What is the exit plan on this business, right? What are we going to do? Ask questions. Is this even enough money of education funding? That's used for education funding. Do we have enough cash? I'm worried about this cash in this kind of COVID situation. If we have to sit out, basically take a reduction in income for some period of time, do we have enough cash? Am I going to be forced to liquidate my brokerage account? How are we going to pay the mortgage? Can we refinance right now? Gosh, mortgage rates are super low. Can I do something about that? Do we even have the right amounts of coverage? I don't know the answers to any of that. That's why I'm going to ask these questions. I'm going to apply my intelligence to this situation. That is what I'm going to run my entire meeting around. And by the way, you see the pace at which I'm doing it? I can't do that pace with a client. They'll be like, Adam, rewind. Okay. I'm doing this for you, number one, to keep your attention span focused. And number two, to impress upon you how critical it is for us to address the intentionality of every single one of these boxes. If you see something missing, you have to either fix it or you have to fill it. If it's not right, I want you to fix it, get it off this map. It's not supposed to be there. It doesn't serve them. Let's replace it with something that serves them. If it's not there, we need to fill it in. And one of the ways that we tend to recommend, if you're uncomfortable talking about certain topics, like one might argue, Betsy, making as much money she is as a co-president, a lot of dependency on her income. Why doesn't she have disability insurance? Okay, let's talk about it. Let me make sure that I don't skip it. Watch what I'm going to do. Building blocks. I'm going to ask her about disability policies. I'm going to apply that to Betsy. Watch what's going to happen. It's going to enable me. It's going to give me permission to ask these questions at the next meeting. By the way, Betsy, I'm going through these boxes. I see you have some term insurance from a company you don't understand. Do you have any of these two things? I know a lot of your peers tend to have group insurance, either disability that's taxable or individual tax-free disability. You can change any of these names, by the way, if you don't like the way I called it. Okay. You have that, right? And then you just be quiet and listen. The answers are what? Typically, I don't know what you're talking about, or no, I never did it, or I never got to it, or I don't like that stuff. I don't believe in insurance. Whatever the answer is, it's my opportunity to say I talked about it. And of course, memorialize that in your notes if they say they don't want it. If they do inform you that they do have it, then that's great. Tell me, what do you have? Actually, Adam, a bunch of years ago, I did buy it. I just forgot to tell you. I have it. I don't even know who the insurance carrier is, but it's only like $2,000 a month for 5 years, right? So something, if this was critical illness or something like that, okay, great. By the way, is that enough? I don't know. Is it enough, Adam? I tell you what, let's look at that. I'm going to jump to target maps, and I've opened it in another tab because typically I don't like waiting for refresh rates. So I opened this already up in another tab. These are the target maps, and they show me, and I ran these are from last year, but they're constantly recalculating based upon the information I just put into the asset map. So if this is live linked and not overwritten, what's happening is basically these were their priorities last year, by the way. It was retirement, education, and of course, loss of life. They were concerned it's still underfunded here. I might be inclined to run a disability target map. I'm not going to do it today. This is something you really want to play with. But it's important for us to tell people really quickly. I'm going to show you in a second how we did this from scratch. But what's important, if this is an annual review meeting, is to constantly revisit this stuff and ask them, is this the priority? Last time we talked, we named retirement as our number one priority. How about education? You know what, Adam? Education's moved up to the top. Okay, I'm just going to put it at the top. We should probably look at that, right? Where are we going to get the funding from this year? Oh, let's click on that for a second. Right now, we're only about 14% funded. We're short about $185,000 a year, right? If we have the next 5 years to fund this, we're looking at saving as much as $3,400 a month in dollars. This could be any currency, obviously. Okay, that's what the clients want to know. But Adam, I just don't understand. What are we assigning? Well, right now we only have 2 assignments of assets to this goal, right? From the planned spending. One of our kids is already in the middle of school. Let's look at the burn down. Right now we only have enough money for the first year and a little bit of the second year. You can see how, unfortunately, we're going to have to make some serious distributions from our assets or either decide to go into debt of about $250,000. I don't know that we want to do this. This is at a 5% cost of money. Right? That's the impact to your retirement if we basically decide to finance this whole project versus actually take it from assets that we actually don't have, maybe borrow it from Nana. She's got that money that's going to come as an inheritance. Maybe we want to do that. The point is to start the conversation and get people involved in this. These are their numbers. If they want to tell you that, you know what, Adam, I think we're going to assign our Play brokerage account to cover that need. Fantastic. Now we just covered another amount of money for this. We're short only $2,800 a month. And you get the idea. Adam, well, what happens if we earn more money? Good luck. Well, if you earn more money, now we only have to save that much. Okay. This is a short-term plan. You can see interest rates are not going to affect this drastically. Okay. Hopefully that just illustrated to you how you should get people involved in an annual review meeting. I can easily spend an hour doing this with you and your family, and you'll still ask for more, because the key is I'm making you part of it. I'm not spending 2 hours before the meeting and then coming to you with a presentation that all of a sudden I learned half the information I have is wrong. All right? We're not doing that anymore. Our preparation is literally 5 minutes before a remote meeting. We're going to work on it together. The key is I have to have the tools that are consumable and make sense in front of the client so that we're actually working on this together like a Lego project. We're just dumping all the Legos on the page. I've decided we have all the stuff we have to need. Now we're just going to build something together. Okay. Different engagement than traditional financial planning, because now we're trying to solve problems together based upon intentionality. Now, how would I have done this for a new person, right? So let's say Ben actually introduced me to a new prospect and said, you know what, Adam, I love this. I have a friend who wants to experience this too. He needs help. His advisor never calls him. He bought some insurance. He doesn't know what's going on. Would you talk to him? Sure. What's their name? Jonah and Mary. Great. Send me their email. Jonah, I set up a meeting with Jonah. I've got them to use my automated scheduler. They found some time that works. I send them a meeting confirmation and I send them this. This is built into Asset Map because we found that a lot of advisors are having a hard time collecting the data coming up for a remote meeting. There wasn't going to be an opportunity for the client to bring a big shoebox of all their statements they never read. And of course, they're not going to scan it. They're never going to do their homework. So we had to make it super easy. So what we did is we designed this experience where every advisor has the ability to send out a personal link. We've already built it for everybody that can be sent to 1 million people at once or one person. It doesn't matter. And what happens is that you allow them to pre-build their asset map before they come in. That means they do a 15-minute survey on their phone. It's really not intimidating. If they've played a video game before, they can do it. Even if they haven't, they could probably do that. It's on their phone, on the device, whatever it is. They get it, they set it up, and you get a notification that says, oh, your asset map is created. What does that tend to look like? Well, of course, I already took the time to do it, but just to give some people a preview, because you're probably curious, well, how do you actually do that? This is my personal link. You can actually see it. I'm going to do this an even quicker way by inviting our friend Jonah. Oops, Jonah and Mary. All right, I'm going to use US. You can use whatever currency you want. And I'm going to actually launch this right now. So this is what they would experience. And they would start it and they would say, okay, tell us about you. Well, I'm Jonah Smith and I'm a male and I'm 45 years old. And what else? Oh, there's other people. Yep, there's some other people in my life. Like who? Oh, I guess a spouse. Oh, good. You're going to ask a lot of questions here. What did we say? Sarah or Mary? Mary? I don't even remember anymore. Smith. She's female. 45. Okay, good. Pretty good. Okay, I will skip that. And really what this is designed so that they can't mess it up, right? These are the things that they have. And of course, they're going to take some time. Hopefully they'll do this before they turn on Netflix or watch the television. And they're going to include some interesting things about their employment and how much what they make. And hopefully they make enough money and whatever it is. Okay, so I've already taken the time to do this so we don't spend 15 minutes actually filling this out. But what's important about this is that we're going to learn what they want to focus on, and it's going to embed that right into the map. So I'm going to bail on this process right now and show you what I already got. So I get an email, and this is what I get. Okay, so on my system, I got Jonah. I changed the name to Sarah. Okay, so Jonah and Sarah, this is what I learned about them. That before they come in the meeting, I already know basically where all their stuff is buried. Granted, I don't have to spend all of our time in the meeting going through statements. I don't have to go online and try to figure out what in God's name do they own here. I know that they have told me a couple different things, right? Now, for those of you that are not in the States, we have changed this language so it doesn't have the word IRA anymore. It has, you can call it whatever you want. So if you call this, this is a retirement plan or a pension, maybe, that's very common. You can change that name, it doesn't matter to us, or the client would have already put in the right name, actually, in this case. So that's what that means. And you would notice some things that are pretty familiar here, like homes and mortgages and brokerage accounts, maybe mutual funds, some savings, and so forth. Notice what's happening over here on the left. We actually are putting the things they cared about talking about as an actual instrument. In other words, if you say you're concerned about college, then you probably have or should have a college fund, correct? If you're concerned about retirement security, we probably should have resources allocated or dedicated to that security. The same thing is true for tax advantage, family protection, estate planning, any of that stuff. We need intentionality on the map. So that is the key to why it's here. Now, you're probably looking at this map and going right into technical mode and saying, gosh, wow, Jonah's making a good amount of money. So is Sarah. They probably don't have enough life insurance. Well, that's a problem. They don't have the right disability, right? That's a problem. If they're disabled, this is a tough situation. They're probably at age of 45. They're undersaved for retirement. That's pretty clear. Oh, she's got some debt we have to deal with. They have a good amount of brokerage accounts. So maybe we can make sure that we get some tax advantages from these dollars here. Maybe we can get some retirement security by providing some shelters or some protections here. And college, maybe we could take some of this money and we could put to college. Anyway, the point is that you can start thinking right away. So typically in a meeting like this, a junior doesn't have any assets. Typically in a meeting like this, we'll just talk about why they have all this stuff. Why do you have, what were you thinking when you bought this? What were you trying to achieve? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? What works about it? What doesn't work? How can I add value? Have you thought about this, that, and the other? I tend to apply stencils in this case, as I showed you, by basically putting in placeholders to talk about whether they're the life insurance or maybe there's annuities here, or maybe there's cash management we need to think about. The point is that you need to apply your intelligence. We're not going to do that for you. Your job is literally to figure out what these people need. But one of the things that we need to quantify in some cases is how funded are they for certain needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run the target maps literally in 30 seconds, and I'm going to actually decide based on our conversation live with them. They said that their concerns was they realized they probably don't have a great loss of life scenario. They obviously are concerned about education for junior, and I'm going to run a joint retirement scenario for them and watch what happens in the next 30 seconds. It's going to build all of their financial plans out in such a way that now we can just start tinkering with it. The key to this, and it started with life because it's the first one I listed, is that it enables me to go right into the conversation and figure out whether this is truly an issue or not. Based upon what I assume for most of my clients, you typically want to replace against these calamities. I want to protect against income replacement during your working years. You could see that's age 65. The key is, by the way, not to focus too much on this for this conversation. You have to go learn this stuff for yourself, right? But the point is, the way we think that engagement should happen with the client is by literally doing it in front of them, right? It's like going to a restaurant. Remember those days when we used to go to restaurants? And actually they cook the food in front of you. It's a whole different experience than all of a sudden a mystery thing comes out here and, oh, I guess that looks nice. I guess it's great, right? You're seeing what's going into it. So therefore you own it, you're part of it. You can ask for customization as well. Typically for this, I like income replacement. I want a transition income because I don't want this spouse survivor go back to work right away. I want them to stay with the kids. I want to pay off the debt, have a party, pay off the kids' education. And then of course I want some emergency reserves. The system decided all that because I set it up that way, and that's at each advisor's preference, okay? But what happens if they say, you know what, Adam, I don't really care about that. Okay, fine, we won't pay off the debt, and we'll forego education expenses, and we won't do transition income, and you know what, instead I think I need maybe $60,000 a year. Okay, fine. It's your numbers. What do we actually have to assign for this? Can we sell the house? No. Can we use the brokerage account? Yeah, sure. You can use the brokerage account. And our savings? Great. Okay. Your life insurance? Perfect. Okay. We're short $726,000 of capital. Here's what it means. Here's the problem. your family needs a bunch of money in these later years. You don't have it. What do you want to do about it? Well, Adam, how would you solve the problem? Well, if it were me, I probably would just go buy life insurance and cover this exposure of 726,000. But if you want to self-fund it, you can over the next 10 years, and you could probably try to do it. It's going to cost you about $7,600 a month. You see what I just did? The key to all these decisions in financial planning, again, I'm trying to get people to make decisions, is to understand what the alternatives are based upon that you know them. You know them. You know their situation. Their options are clearly, in this case, I guess I'm going to buy insurance because it's probably cheaper than $7,600 a month for the next 10 years. And by the way, I could put that money to better use than self-funding some scenario that's unlikely to happen, but I got to protect the risk. The same thing is true for all of these. So you can see how quickly we can bring up a conversation around any of these things like retirement planning and really negotiate almost how we actually have to manage the money and make some of these decisions. Extending retirement, assigning different assets, reducing our needs. That should be live with the client so they own it, and then we should revisit it every single year. Now, I showed you previously that there was a way to actually do all this reporting. It's one-click reporting. I decide what pages that I want. But one of the things I didn't show you is this idea of notes. Remember in the beginning, I showed you some of the best practices was to actually have to-dos and takeaways. One of the things that we built this year was this idea called notes. And what it does is it enables us to output a report that follows the asset map that shows actually, let me zoom in because I don't know what kind of screen you're using. It shows actually notes that I put in over the time of our conversation together on actions that may need to be addressed. And I actually send it to the client because I want their buy-in. This is a collaborative experience. That means I need them to do something. They need to send me money. They need to send me statements. They need to make decisions. They need to choose their beneficiaries. They need to decide to fund things. And I need them to buy into it. So it's literally a partnership in this process. And that's really where we need to move to. I think it's where the business has been for years. But I think it's really critical we do this. Now you would say, Adam, how do I do that? Well, the way you do that actually is inside of the asset map, there's a way to tag a note to every single instrument that you see here. And what you might notice here is that if I click on Benjamin Franklin, you might notice that there's some notes here, and you can see I already took care of this. So I put, in fact, that it should be a strict through or strict. I don't know how you would say that. So in every single box, there is a tab at the top that says notes, and this is basically where you would put them. I tend to do them right in the meeting, so there's clearly buy-in. And so forth. I also said I would show you how I use Riskalyze in these cases. And there's some really great integrations, including Orion, Riskalyze, Redtail, Salesforce, some of the other tools that people are using. But this is a really cool way to illustrate risk. This is actually pulling live from their actual portfolio holdings in these cases for the accounts I manage. And it's telling me that Ben wants to be an 83 out of 100 on the risk scale. His actual portfolio is a 52, so clearly there's a misalignment here that probably served him well. The reason is because although he's aggressive in his retirement accounts, he's taken a lot of risk off the table with some of these annuities, and also bets he tends to be much more conservative. So by design, you can see how the aggregation of their portfolio yields them a 52. So this is really interesting, and I think you're going to see more and more of this conversational discussion around risk profiling and client profiling merged together in a single layer, which is something we're trying to do very actively. Okay, so I am at the end of the time I had allotted for this specifically, and I want to make time for questions. So hopefully by this time you've been putting questions on the right-hand panel side, and Allison's going to cull through all of them. We will not get through all of them, I am sure. In fact, we'll commit to responding to each of you who've asked a question and you didn't get your answer today. But Allison, with that, let me be cognizant of time and open it up for questions.
We've got a lot of questions and just kind of general feedback. Thank you to all of you who have said that you're really getting a lot of benefit out of this. We'd love to hear that, of course. So I want to thank you first for saying that. We appreciate it. One comment saying that one of our attendees today is finding that video has been very effective in the last few days. Someone participated in a session yesterday and again today and found out that the video is very helpful in engaging and not distracting. So that is a great, certainly great feedback.
All right, you got it.
On video. I love it. Here's a question for us. Can you recommend any specific tools that you've tested? Example being video conferencing or earphones that you're having success with, Adam?
Yeah, so this comes up a lot. I got to be careful not to endorse anything. I would tell you that probably the two most popular tools right now tend to be Zoom and Join Me, mostly because they're the least expensive. Zoom, I think, tends to edge out pretty much everybody these days on simplicity. Our company moved to Zoom recently off of the provider we were with for many years, just because there was very nominal setup. You send a link to somebody, it works immediately. The kids are using it in the school these days with their teachers, and it's free actually. Up to a certain number of users. I think it's limited to 45 minutes. But it's nominal. I think if you want to use it, it works in our conversations overseas all the time. So I think that's probably the best tool out there popular-wise. In terms of headsets, we tend to use Plantronics pretty religiously. They've had the kind of best ratings in terms of headsets, dual earphone headsets, because it's hard to stay focused, especially if there's other noise in the room. The challenge with this stuff, and I think that even stuff like this, these earpods, I'm using a new Painbu system, which I like really well. It's got 10 hours of battery life without me having to charge it, and it charges 4 times without me having to charge it. So those are that's probably, I just made an endorsement. I'm trying these out. They're working pretty well.
Thank you. Here's another question for us. So you mentioned, sometimes unexpected issues can come up with internet, things like that. If you run into some kind of internet issue and you have to email a PDF to a client, do you send it secured?
Yeah, no, you have to. If you have a capacity to send secure, I got to imagine you're going to do it. Now, AssetMap doesn't actually have, by design, any PII other than date of birth if you allow it. And so theoretically, there's no account numbers. There are no account numbers theoretically. But the reality is that it's a pretty good navigational map if it got in the wrong hand. So I would always recommend sending it secure. Some of our clients do send all their PDFs through a SharePoint or some other form of file sharing service, which just makes sense today, or uploads it. Black Diamond did an integration with us recently where you could push the AssetMap reports right into the client thread, which is like a Facebook chat thread with the client in their protected environment. So I think you're going to see more and more of this. We're working on a project here. I think that'll become relevant to that as well. But in the meantime, making a PDF with password protection is pretty good. Sending secure if you have that facility.
Adam, what do the different colors of the boxes represent?
That's a good question. And I think actually I have my menu turned off, and you can actually view the legend. So what you would see here is, if you can read at the bottom, basically it says purple is cash flow. It's got a circle to it. Real estate, retirement in red, non-retirement in green. Liabilities are orange. And blue is insurance. The highlights there indicate that it's owned by another, which means very often we see that somebody would think of an asset as their own, but it's really their kids, or it's in a trust, or it's in a charity, or whatever it might be, but they control it. So we want it actually showing up on their map. You have the ability to show it up on someone's balance sheet that doesn't own it. And then, of course, you could see here annuity and dotted line, as well as expected assets. That means things that are going to come in the future are, grayed out. And if they're a stencil, which means an overlay, you can see they're fully grayed out in the line. There's a stencil. Okay. What else do you have?
Adam, do you have a checklist for your workflows and setup procedures that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah, actually we do. We have a one pager that our team put together based upon this feedback. And so that's available to you. Allison, I would love to know exactly where it is. I think it's out on social media, and it's probably on our website. But if you have that, whoever asked that question or whoever else wants that, please just put in the chat bar, say, I want that, or I want the checklist. And we'll make sure that we somehow get it to you.
I think that's a great suggestion. And how do I introduce AssetMap to an existing client? I have some information that I can pre-populate for the AssetMap, and was wondering how we should do that.
Yeah, that's a good question. For many of us, we just crossed 1 million people in AssetMap. That's pretty impressive. So we know they've been done a lot, but there's still more than 1 million people out there, best I can tell. And that means that not everybody has experienced this. So I will tell you, the most successful introduction to AssetMap goes like this. Ben and Betsy, how are you doing? Good to see you. I know it's been crazy times. Listen, I want to get right to it and talking about our financial situation right now. I have taken the liberty of creating what's called an asset map for you and your family based upon what I know about you and the decisions we've already made. So let's just take the next 10 minutes to make sure I've got my facts straight and go through this. At the end, I'll give you a copy of this so you could take this home and you can use this as effectively a treasure map. Now, the reason I did that, that was in state, okay? The reason I did that is because I want to show them I'm intentionally doing something for their benefit that they didn't ask for. That's the first part. When you give somebody a gift that they weren't expecting it, it's a gift depending upon how you deliver it. Asset map is a gift, okay? It's accepted if the brownies are a little burnt, okay? Because the information is not exactly right on all the map. In fact, we know they're going to give us, no, Adam, you're missing this, and oh wait, what about this? Or no, this number's wrong, or I don't have that money there, or because the reality is we have to correct and get on the same page. We do not start with perfection ever. And so the key is to start with the thoughtfulness of the gift, which is I took that liberty of creating your life on one page. I know this will be useful. Here, help me understand what's going on so that I can bring value. It's critical that you deliver it this way because it's an opportunity to, number one, show you're adding value and that you're being thoughtful and empathetic to the reality that they don't want your 80-page report. No, thank you. I don't want that, right? I'm not going to read it. I know that you want simplicity. Let me give it to you. By the way, if you don't do it, some robo-advisor is going to do it. So you should do it. Again, if you need that wording or that script, you want to hear that 100 times so that it's embedded in the brain, it's in our support center. It's available to everybody. Just type in script in our support center. It'll pull up a video of me doing the exact same thing. And of course, this will probably be available to you as well. Allison, I think I need to move on given the time. Is there any one question that's burning?
I think we have a few more, but they're certainly they're able to easily be answered individually to the folks who asked. I want to thank everyone again for all of your fantastic questions. And if we didn't get to them, please expect an email or a contact from one of our sales or support team. And thank you so much. Adam, back to you.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to let everybody know that there are other resources. We have been running boot camps for a select number of advisors that come to Philadelphia, but obviously that's not happening. And so we are moving our boot camp to a remote session. We're going to try this. We already have a great amount of interest in this already, where we're going to allow you to stay at your home and we're going to do 4-hour sessions. So if you're already at home and you're trying to figure out what am I going to do with my day and I want to invest in myself, we're going to be running a boot camp 101. That means learning everything you need to know to start out on Asset Map and accelerate your learning curve. It's a half-day program. We're going to make it available to the entire planet, which means you can join from anywhere. If you're interested in it, you can see there's a URL at the very top to go learn more. We're also running a 201 version for our people who are already going to pass the 101 level and they really want to learn how to generate $100,000 in income from using Asset Map. That's the real, what we call the practice accelerator. It's all the best practices that we've learned in the practice to actually go acquire assets, to place more protection. And so those are really kind of our elite programs. We would love for you to be there. It's a 2-day program, and we're going to split it up into 2 4-hour sessions. And of course, we are working, I shouldn't say of course, we're working on an academy. We've got so much demand for this information and also to be part of a community of people who are like-minded and want to add something to the business and contribute to our clients. We want to create a forum where we get together and we play and we learn. And so that's coming. That's to be determined, especially with what's going on in the market here. And I wanted to leave you with the following. The reality is that a lot of us are actually buying technology and using technology, and all financial advisors are in some way forced to adopt technology. But that's really not the differentiator here, right? We all know that the reason that the clients are doing business is probably because they're doing business with us and our team and the brand that we've created, the reputation we have, our credibility, and how we ultimately give them confidence. I think hopefully you agree with that. The real future of our business is how we're going to apply our advisor intelligence, our prudence, our best interest to their situation in real time. It's not going to be the technology. We're all going to have the same stuff. And so the key is I need you to find a way to be impactful and relevant. That's what we all need to do. And very much of what I think is our future is not going to be about artificial intelligence, but rather our advisor intelligence, and ultimately what we do to lift our population of clients who are looking to us more than ever to help them make better decisions. If that's something that we can be part of, and we hope this aligns with your mission about what you're trying to bring to the planet, be part of our community and find out ways to get more involved and deliver more. And hopefully this resonated with you and you want to be part of that. We welcome you. We've got thousands of advisors doing it now. We want to really change the world, and we think we can do it. Even if it is a technology platform, it's going to ultimately lead to better decisions for our clients and serve more people. So hopefully you're part of that and that resonates. Thank you very much for being on this call. We appreciate your time and your attention. We wish you and your family a very safe journey for the next several months. Please let us know how we can help you. Give us feedback so that we can grow as well. With that, Allison, why don't we close the meeting and say goodbye to everybody? And we'll look forward to seeing you at the next opportunity.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. Let us know if you need anything.